I thought I'd do a video on why it's actually important to prepare for a sort of shit hits the fan scenario or anything like that, because there's obviously a lot of people who say nothing bad's ever going to happen, it's sort of, you know, delusional fantasy or whatever. So I thought in about 5 minutes I'd think up a list of bad things that could happen, which would obviously lead to a scenario where prepping for something bad would be important. So this list was done in under 5 minutes, so it's in no way comprehensive, but it should at least give you some idea of sort of how many things could potentially happen somewhere in the world that would require you to be prepared to survive, or at least have a much easier time. And so this isn't restricted to this country, it could be anywhere in the world, so some of these events would be more likely in other countries, but I thought obviously this would be an interesting thing to compile it as a list. Obviously if you think of any, add them to the comments. So we'll start off with natural disasters. Now this is a big one because that can happen pretty much anywhere in the world, but obviously certain regions are more prone to it. So this could be flooding, hurricanes, earthquakes, tsunami, anything like that. Snowstorms where people are cut off, there's a lack of food, there's a lack of emergency services, so you need clean food and you need obviously clean drinking water, you need lots of spare food, you need medical supplies, and obviously there's going to be people who try and take these supplies from you if you have them. So it's important to be prepared for that. You could have rioting. This could be as a result of any of the other sort of things, or just on its own, rioting kicked off by looting, whatever, people wanting free stuff, wanting to make a point about something. You could be a target of this sort of thing if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time. So that's obviously important, why it's important to get out of somewhere like that. Nuclear leak, so like a nuclear disaster, something like Chernobyl, Fukushima, anything like that, 3 Mile Island, and obviously there's only those are the really major ones, but there's been lots of smaller nuclear problems in the past, and obviously if you live near a power station that might be a point where you think actually I need to get out if there's been a problem, rather than waiting to be evacuated. Civil war. Now this could, or events leading up to a civil war. So in the country generally, if one group, be it religious, ethnic, whatever, political ideology gets too big, it can actually cause a lot of problems where obviously they try and overthrow or take over. This has happened loads of times in the past, obviously where one group tries to overthrow another because they've actually become the biggest group in the country. So it's also important to be prepared for that, which could lead to a potential civil war. In Greece at the moment we're actually seeing what could be a lead up to a civil war, or actually massive violence, where the situation's bad, people don't have food, they don't have the money for food, and obviously the hardline political parties are creating their own sort of, you know, paramilitaries to run the country, because the police and government don't run anything anymore in Greece. They like to think they do, but they don't. So, anything on from that, an invasion by another country or whatever, which could obviously lead to a situation where you need to get out of there fast for your own safety, family's safety, and building on that, conscription, where if you live obviously in a country where they might be fighting unjust wars or whatever, they might try and force you to be conscripted into a war where you might inevitably die, or you don't believe in the war. And obviously I'm not going around going, oh, you should definitely avoid a war at any cost, because I don't want to sound like, you know, some sort of bleeding heart liberal or whatever, but my point being that obviously in some situations being conscripted could mean certain death, and it could be for the very wrong reasons that they're conscripting you. So obviously that's something that could potentially lead to civil unrest and everything. Disease, if there's a potentially fatal disease outbreak, that could spread fast. You might want to get out from wherever you are to avoid infection. You might have to be careful about avoiding other people in case they can carry an infection. Obviously the extreme of this is a zombie apocalypse. Now that's quite unlikely, but something like rabies, or even just some sort of superbug that transmits from people to people, could obviously be a major reason to avoid anything like that. A fuel crisis, if fuel or electricity run low, people are going to be rioting and they're going to be desperate for fuel, and obviously desperate for lighting, and that's a situation where you want to get away from people as soon as possible. And food shortage. I've probably already said this, but if food or water runs low for whatever reason, you can't get supplies in for any of the other reasons, people will start to riot, people will start to try and get it if you've got those supplies. So obviously, as I said, not a comprehensive list. I could probably think of a lot more if I spent longer. And obviously, this is what I'm trying to say, that being prepared isn't a silly thing, because lots of things could happen, even if it's not, you know, in a doomsday type scenario. It could just make life a lot easier if a bad thing does happen. And if it's of interest to anyone, what I might try and do is think up some good actual items to have during some of these potential scenarios. So we'll look at some of the scenarios more closely, then we'll go, would it be, you know, a good idea to have these items, and then what your plan should be. So I hope this has been interesting for people, and yeah, stay safe.